Blaxploitation movies, that's the term that was given to these films, blaxploitation, were in many ways an important step in filmmaking for African American actors, actresses, writers, and producers. If you look at the history of film leading up to the early 1970s, you will see that while there were in fact black actors and actresses that had been featured in films, they really didn't have the kind of exposure or the kind of important and central kind of roles that the white actors and actresses had. And then when it comes to the directing and production side of it, not so much activity at all. So blaxploitation is in many ways the way that the African American film industry or films targeted primarily at an African American audience really sort of gets an important start. And sitting at the very center of the center and the beginning of this movement, these blaxploitation films, is one from 1971 called Sweetback's Badass Song. And yes, there are 5 S's at the end of badass there from 1971. This film offered an African-American perspective on urban life. It was an independent film, so it wasn't sponsored by or bankrolled by sort of a big Hollywood studio. These blaxploitation films often featured they were often sort of cop action sort of figures, that action pics, that kind of thing. And as I say, using primarily black actors and actresses. This one, Sweetback's Badass Song, was written, directed, and co-produced by Martin Van Peebles, a very important figure at the beginning of this movement here. The film itself was set in Los Angeles. The main character, Sweetback, is falsely charged with a crime. He escapes. He knocks a police officer out unconscious or whatever. And the movie is about his sort of fleeing from being arrested again, and eventually he emerges victorious in the sense that he flees south to Mexico and gets away from the authorities. But the whole sort of scene of him, being falsely accused and being taken into custody and all that sort of fits in with some of what we've been talking about with regard to the realities of urban life in the African American communities. Think, for example, about the Stevie Wonder track "Living for the City," which in many ways, coming a couple years later, sort of recounts a similar kind of tale, although not with exactly all the same kinds of situation. Anyway. The importance of these blaxploitation movies is that they frequently had soundtracks that were composed and performed and produced by important acts in black pop of the 1970s. So for us, it's important to acknowledge the role played by blaxploitation films in the film industry, but as a music course, we really want to know what was going on with the music. So it really enters into our story because it figures into what we want to say about the important music of the 1970s. And one of the really big, there are 2 artists who really got their widespread crossover exposure via these blaxploitation film soundtracks, and that's Isaac Hayes and Curtis Mayfield. So we'll talk about them in turn here, starting with Isaac Hayes. Isaac Hayes, of course, has his roots as a Stax songwriter and producer, working with those Stax artists at the second half of the 1960s, Sam and Dave, and a lot of those groups. Younger students may know him as the voice of Chef on South Park, but nevertheless, Isaac Hayes was already an important figure by the time the 70s roll around. His first solo album, called Presenting Isaac Hayes from 1968 on Stax, was kind of a flop, and that made Isaac Hayes think, I don't really need to do this performing thing. I'm going to go back to just producing and writing. But at about this time, the people at Stax had lost the Atlantic catalog. Remember the story we told in week 6 of the first half of the course, where we talked about how there was a split between Atlantic and Stax. And anyway, so they all of a sudden had lost the Atlantic artists, lost that back catalog. And so the people at Stax were really interested in recording and releasing a lot of albums as soon as possible so they could get a kind of catalog to start earning revenue from. And so Isaac Hayes was pressed into service, and he said, well, you know, I had such a bad experience with the first one that, you know, I'll only do a second one if you give me complete creative control of the record. I said, sure, fine, whatever it takes, just do it. So he brought out this album in 1969 called Hot Buttered Soul. It's considered a classic in soul music. It had great commercial success on the R&B charts in the African American community. It's an album that has 4 tracks on it. 2 songs on one side, 2 songs on the other side. Well, and there's a long song on each side of that album. Isaac Hayes does the song By the Time I Get to Phoenix. Now that had been a song written by Jimmy Webb and had been a hit for Glen Campbell on the country charts, a #2 hit for Glen Campbell in 1967, had crossed over to #26 in the pop charts. And of course, Glen Campbell became a kind of a celebrity via his variety show, the Glen Campbell Good Time Hour. And so a hit by Glen Campbell would get heard a lot on AM radio. But Isaac Hayes does his version of the tune. It runs to almost 19 minutes, the first 9 minutes of which is Isaac Hayes narrating a whole story that gets up to him being able to sort of come to the punchline. And so by the time I get to Phoenix, and he starts to sing. And it's a very ambitious cover version, takes up most of one side of the record. Now, we might hook this back up with things like the Vanilla Fudge during Psychedelia, and what I called at that point the symphonic psychedelic cover version, where they take things like You Keep Me Hanging On, a short little 2-minute song, and turn it into a 5, 6, 7-minute sort of extravaganza. Although here we take a song that in the original version couldn't have been much longer than 3 minutes, and it becomes 19 minutes. He does the same thing with the Burt Bacharach, Hal David song Walk On By, which had been a hit for Dionne Warwick in 1964, a #6 hit for her. That one goes to 12 minutes. So this album is a real classic. It really is the emergence of Isaac Hayes as he came to be seen in the 1970s. Now he's with the shaved head and the gold jewelry, and that is the whole image that became what Isaac Hayes was. So he did a couple more solo albums, and then he gets the call to do the soundtrack for a movie called Shaft. Now Shaft was, you know, one step up from Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, in the sense that now Shaft was released by a major studio. MGM released this movie in 1971. It was the story of John Shaft, a private eye in New York City, and his sort of goings-on in his life in the African American community. It was thought of at the time as he was a kind of a black James Bond, you know, cooler than James Bond, that kind of thing. And so Isaac Hayes gets the call to do the soundtrack for that. That soundtrack, Shaft, goes to #1 in the pop charts, #1 in the R&B charts, #1 in the jazz charts in 1971. And the song, theme from Shaft, Can You Dig It, went to #1 on the pop charts and #2 in the R&B charts, and encapsulated a lot of what it is that we come to think of as the soundtracks to these blaxploitation movies. Not only the sort of hip groove, but the sort of wah-wah guitar, you know, the waka-ticka-ticka-ticka-ticka-ticka, that kind of thing that goes on there. And so Shaft was in many ways, and of course these really lush string arrangements would sound in many ways very much like the Philadelphia sound in terms of that, or Papa Was a Rolling Stone. So all these things kind of together sort of make up. But this combination of elements is now really starting to come together in the early 70s, and we're seeing it in a lot of different places. The other person who had fantastic success with the soundtrack is Curtis Mayfield and his soundtrack for Superfly in 1972. Now, Curtis Mayfield had already had a lot of success on the R&B charts in the 1960s with his group based out of Chicago called the Impressions. He'd done some songwriting for Jerry Butler before that, and Jerry Butler had some hits. He comes to Chicago. He's got this group, the Impressions. They've got hits in 1963 with It's All Right, in 1964 with Keep On Pushing, in 1965 People Get Ready. All of them featuring Curtis Mayfield's lead vocal, which he sang mostly in falsetto, so another kind of falsetto vocalist that we can talk about in popular music to go with people like Brian Wilson and Frankie Valli and people like Eddie Kendricks from the Temptations. Anyway, he writes the soundtrack for Superfly, a film from 1972, which is the story of a cocaine dealer in New York City and all the adventures he has as a drug dealer dealing with the mafia and all that inside of New York City and this kind of thing. And the album, Superfly, in 1972, only misses the success of Shaft by one. It was #1 in the pop charts, #1 in the R&B charts, only #2 in the jazz charts in 1972. 2 hits off of that, Freddie's Dead and the title song, Superfly. Interesting thing about Curtis Mayfield is if you were a white rock listener watching sort of television variety shows, of the black artists that I'm talking about this week that you would most likely see, Stevie Wonder would be somebody who you would see on mainstream TV a bunch. Stevie Wonder had, of course, already been a star in the 1960s. But Curtis Mayfield was on television constantly, or at least that's the way I recall it, living in the United States during that period. And so for many ways, for a lot of white listeners who didn't really know all the music that we're talking about this week, Curtis Mayfield was kind of the face, the embodiment of what was happening in black pop at the time. And of course it was associated with these blaxploitation films and all of the imaging of life and black urban life that went with it. And so it played a large role in sort of defining what black music was, black pop was, for people who really didn't know much of it, right? It was kind of a real outsider's perspective, and Curtis Mayfield sort of stood for a lot of that. Well, that ends our discussion of blaxploitation soundtracks. Let's now move on to the music of James Brown and the way that led to Parliament Funkadelic.